Hello, welcome to the second session of Sri Hanuman Chalisa. We will start with our prayers, gratitude to the Lord, without whose grace and benevolence nothing is possible, and prayers to our Guruji and the entire Guru Parampara, our Guruma, through whose grace we can imbibe this understanding, this wisdom, this knowledge can come to us. And I must say that I am still a learner on this path, and whatever I am sharing with you is whatever I have learned from our Guruji. And we will start with a prayer. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadi Tamastu Ma Vidvishamahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So this book by Sri Pawan Kumarji Mishra called The Living Hanuman, it gives his journey from a selfie to the self, and whatever we are going to discuss, most of this has been taken from this book, Sri Living Hanuman. So Sri Hanuman Chalisa starts with two dohas which conveys the purpose of the Chalisa, where it shows that the clean mind or Antakarana Shuddhi, it's a very important part of the learning process on this tradition, because ultimately we have to go to the self-knowledge or the Jnana, which is the final climax or the last goal, but the first goal is the Antakarana Shuddhi, the purification of the mind, without which we cannot achieve this Jnana or Moksha. The first to the 8 verses, which we are going to talk in today's session, are the qualities of Sri Hanumana, what qualities he has. And the 9 to 11th verses are the deeds of Sri Hanumana. The 12 to 15 verses are the praises of Sri Hanumana that showered by Lord Rama. 16 to 21 is the ascent of the Kundalini Shakti, or the energy that is lying dormant within us, each one of us, the human potential to achieve that. And the verses 22 to 39 are the benefits or the Phala Shruti of the worshipping Lord Hanumana. And the final verse, 40th and the third doha, that tells us that the boon that Sri Hanuman resides in the devotee's heart, or the Aikya, the oneness between all the living beings and the consciousness. So we start with the first doha. Shri Guru Charana Saroja Raja Nij Mano Mukur Sudhari Baranau Raghubar Bimal Jasu Jodayak Phalchari. So in this doha, it says, Shri Guru Charana Saroja Raja, by the dust or the teachings of the lotus feet of my Guru, the spiritual teacher, Nijamonu Mukura Sudhari, I clean the mirror of my mind by regular swadhyaya and the spiritual teachings of my Guruji, which leads to my Mana Shuddhi or the Antakarana Shuddhi. Baranau Raghubara Bimala Jasu, in the clean mirror of the mind, the eternal truth of self-knowledge can be held, just like glorious fame of the Raghukula, Bimala Jasu, the glorious fame of the Raghukula Vansh or the dynasty, of which is represented by Sri Rama, but also Sri Hanumana in one sense. We'll come to that. Jodayaku Phalachari. So one who is Hanumana, the person who Jo means Hanumana, one or Hanumana, Sri Hanumana, who is the giver of, who gives us 4 fruits. These 4 fruits can be Purushartha or other fruits which for seekers who are in their sadhana, in their spiritual aspiration, either they are in the bhakti path or the karma yoga path or the gnana path. And then this summarizes by the daily swadhyaya, the Guru's teachings in the form of Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana is very important for cleaning of the mind. That is a central theme of this central message of these first doha. So this kind of teachings is very important. So let's start with the understanding Shri Guru. Shri is the title for the most respected. So whenever we call Rama, we say Shri Rama, Shri Hanumana, Shri Sita, Shri. So Shri is the most respected person. And it also stands for Shri in the Vidya tradition, also stands for the mother, the Mata, or Kali, Durga, Lakshmi, Saraswati, all the Devis are also called Shri. Guru Krupa. Guru Krupa is the grace that flows from the Guru or the person. So Gu and Ru means, Gu means darkness and Ru means light. So the person who takes us from darkness to the light. And actually Guru is not a person, but it's an energy which helps us to, to transcend darkness, to go towards the light. So that itself means that we go from ignorance to knowledge, because ignorance is darkness and knowledge is the light. So that is what Guru does. And the Guru, what it does is it gives us the jnana, that knowledge which we cannot understand without the help of the Guru. And only through this Guru Shishya Parampara and through Shravana. Shravana means that active listening. When Guru talks about the Vedanta Vakya and the student sits in front of the Guru and listens intently to this, the meanings of these shlokas, what is the literal meaning. So that is how this knowledge or the wisdom has been passed on from generations to generations. Even before the written word was written, this used to be passed on from generations. And the acceptance to be a disciple, Shishyatva Grahana, is also very important. For example, in Mahabharata, in the second adhyaya, seventh shloka, Arjuna accepts a Shishyatva, Shishyasteham Shadimam Tvam Prapannam. So he accepts to be a disciple of Lord Krishna, with whom he was a friend for so many years. And at that point in Mahabharata war, Krishna was his charioteer. But then he accepts to be a disciple, and only after that Lord Krishna gives his entire message or the Updesha in the form of the Jnana Updesha in the second adhyaya, then the Karma Yoga Updesha, and the entire Sri Bhagavad Gita Ji, where he gives a lot of teachings to his disciple Arjuna. So this disciple must be an accomplished disciple who must be adhikaritva, means that he must be having a candidature to become a disciple. Everybody cannot become a disciple on this mark, on this path. So then when this disciple or the seeker goes on this path is called the sadhana. It's a spiritual journey, and the most important part of the spiritual journey is to clean our mind of all the impurities that are there in our mind. It has to be clean. So Jodayaka Falachari, the Char Purushartha are called the Dharma, the Artha, the Kama and the Moksha. So these are the four Purushartha. These are very important. We know that Purushartha, or the action, is the most important part for us as a human being. We have only, Bhagavan Shri Krishna also tells us, Karmanya Vadikaraste Ma Phaleshu Kadachana. Your action is only your choice. The phala or the fruits of the action is not your choice. So it's better you do your action in the best possible way, in a dharma marga. So make sure that whenever you do any action, it is according to dharma, even if it is the artha or the wealth creation or the comforts when we are in our in the grihastha, that also should be through dharma. Kama, fulfillment of our desires, whatever we have, that also should be with the dharma. And finally the moksha purushartha is the fourth purushartha, which the moksha means that we seek freedom or liberation from all these worldly aspirations, our dukkha, miseries, and then we want to get relief from all this. This moksha it is the kalyankari or the shreya purushartha. The first three are the priya purushartha, whereas this takes us away from this world. It liberates from us from this cycle of birth and death. So these are the four purushartha, and purusharthas are very important because all our life we do this. Most of the times we are into action, we are into work, we are into either for some wealth, for creation of comforts, for desires, and so that's why we must make sure that we, this four phala or phala is given by the Lord in the form of our purushartha and our prarabdha. So Jnana Sadhana, if somebody is on the Jnana Sadhana, there is called Sadhana Chatushtya Sampatti. So these are the four important sadhana. Viveka, discriminative intellect. Viveka means discrimination between Atma, Anatma, whatever is truth, whatever is not the truth. Sat, Asat, Vivek, Atma, Anatma, Vivek. The second sadhana is called the vairagya, or the dispassion. So understanding that this is not something that I'm going to, this worldly matters or these objects are not going to give me what I need on my spiritual path. With this understanding, if you let go of these worldly pleasures, the comforts, and go onto this path that is called vairagya. Sham adi shat sampati, shama dama uparati shraddha titiksha samadhana, all these 6 important sampati or the assets are very, very important on the path. Mind control, senses control, dispassion, titiksha is sahanshilta, shraddha is faith, and samadhana. So all these are very, very important. Mumukshu, moksha, tivra ichha, intense desire to have liberation or freedom from all these worldly aspirations, it is, and to get total bliss, to have that inner bliss. So that kind of intense desire is called mumuksha. So these sadhan chatushta sampatti, also the giver of these is the Lord, through which we get all these 4 phala. So Mirza Ghalib has written a very beautiful poem. It says, Umr bhar Ghalib bas yahi bhool karta gaya, chehre pe thi dhool aur aina saaf karta gaya. It says, mirror is not at fault when the image in the mirror looks blurred. We have to clean our own mirror. We have to clean our own self. We don't have to change people or circumstances around. Whenever we see problems, whenever we have problems with people, we should always introspect and see where our mirror needs to be clean, and because we are always in trying to change people around, circumstances around, but these are not under our control. And the moment we realize that, it's a profound understanding, then all our energies are directed inside to change our own self. So I have to work on changing my mind, to clean my mirror of my mind, and I have to change myself, my choices, my beliefs, my thoughts, my attitudes, my wrong notions, my actions, and all this can be changed only by awareness and understanding. The second doha says, Buddhihina tanu janike Sumirau Pavana Kumar Bal Buddhi Vidya Dehu Mohi Harahu Kalesa Vikar. So this talks about Buddhihina Tanu Januke, knowing that I am ignorant. So we have to understand, we have to accept that we don't know, we have impurities, we have ignorance, and we want to go towards the light. Only then the Guru will show us the way. So we have to accept this disciplehood, we have to accept our ignorance, we have to accept our impurities of our mind. Sumirau Pavana Kumar. Sumirau means I am contemplating on you. I am Sumiran. Sumiran means remembering, always remembering you, O son of wind. Pavana Kumar is Hanumana, contemplating on the breath. So we can contemplate or be aware of our breath all the time. And our prayer to our Lord is to give us Bala, Buddhi, Vidya. So we ask for 3 things: strength, Bala. So strength is not just physical. In today's world, just physical strength is not important. More important is the mental strength, the strength to control our mind, our senses, remain in balance, remain peaceful. So that is even more important. Intellect, the understanding, the real understanding, the buddhi, which gives us this understanding. And vidya. Vidya is knowledge. And the real knowledge is the Atmajnanam, the self-knowledge. So we ask for 3 things from the Lord: Bala, Buddhi, Vidya. And we also pray to the Lord to take away Harahu Kalesa Bikar. So take away my Kales. Kales means all the miseries that I have. Klesh. Kales. So these miseries, pain that gives me, always makes me unhappy. So please take away all these Klesa and Bikara. Bikara are the impurities of my mind. My mind always, we have a lot of impurities in our mind, and this needs to be taken away. So this is a prayer to the Lord: give me Bala, Buddhi, Vidya, 3 things, and take away my Klesa and take away my Vikara, or the impurities of my mind. So breath awareness and mindful breathing has been shown to be very, very important. It represents Sri Hanumana, and all of us mortals can access Sri Hanumana only by becoming aware of our breath. So it's a very profound, very powerful, very simple way of invoking the divine. And this connection between the breath and the mind has been accepted in almost all traditions, that you become aware of the breath and you can control your mind, you can modulate your mind becomes quieter the moment you become aware of your breath. And there are many physical benefits and mental benefits of breath awareness. Many traditions like the yoga, Zen, and many other traditions have shown that this is useful. In our own Indian tradition, the pranayama and the asanas, the breathing modulation is done. Breath awareness is a very important part of the Indian tradition, and that is also in the yoga. So in our routine breathing, we don't use the diaphragmatic muscles, or our breathing is mostly passive breathing by the thoracic muscles or the thoracic breathing. It's not the abdominal breathing. The belly breathing is not there. So this is how we can practice the belly breathing. The moment you do belly breathing, your diaphragm becomes more active, which is an accessory muscle of the breathing, and it's a much more important and a powerful muscle for breathing. If you can learn to use this muscle for breathing, like a singers, musicians, trumpet blowers, flute singers, so all these, they use a lot of diaphragmatic breathing to get the exhalation. So with practice, with pranayama, with meditation, with practice of all this yogic style of breathing, we can learn to use this. And meditation is also, in meditation we can use breath awareness to quieten ourselves down and sit in silence. So what are these klesha? So there are pancha klesha, 5 types of klesha, which causes the root cause of all our miseries and all our problems. One is avidya. Avidya is the false identification of ourself, and that is the root cause. Avidya is ignorance. That's the root cause why we are not able to understand our own self. Asmita is a pride, our arrogance, our ego, the pride that we have. That is also cause of a lot of our day-to-day problems and misunderstandings, and lots of our quarrels, daily quarrels with our own people whom we love. The third is a raga. Raga means our attachment to our likes. That sometimes I like certain foods, I want to have that. I like some people, I always want them around me. And then this craving for this pleasure, sensual pleasures, by all our big raga is one of the root causes of lots of our miseries. Similarly, dvesha. Dvesha is something that I don't like. I want to remain away from that because it gives me some pain. So my strong dislikes for particular things, particular food, particular person, particular circumstances, particular objects, particular things, and day-to-day life. So this remain in our mind as samskaras. They are impressions. This raga and dvesha, they are in our mind. So whenever we see that object, if it is raga, we want that. If it is dvesha, we don't want it. So either of it, we want to go towards it or we want to go away from it. So most of our behavior is, it is through this raga dvesha, and that's why these are the root cause of our miseries. And the fourth is called the fifth one, final one, is the abhinivesha. So that's a fear in our mind, and the biggest fear that we have is of our death, and through it, of course, the fear of all the diseases, whether we'll get this coronavirus which has been there and which has killed more than 500,000 people in the world. So whether I will get it or not, this fear many people have today, and this fear is about the abhinivesha. And that's why we operate from this fear, a lot of fear of disease, death, and a lot of these problems. They keep ourselves in misery and our pain, anxieties, worries, stress. A lot of stress comes from these issues. Similarly, vikara. Vikara are the vikara. Vikara, we have about many vikaras or impurities, and some of them are called shad ripu, the kama, desires, endless desires in our mind arising one after the other. If it gets fulfilled, then of course, then it can lead to what is called as a lobha, because we want it again and again, more and more. But if it does not get fulfilled, then we become angry. Then there is a krodha that comes up. And then when the desires get fulfilled, we want it more and more, and then we have it more and more, then we get attached to it, we don't want to leave it, it becomes a moha. And moha is the root cause of most of the problems. If you see our epics, then if you see Ramayana, Sita's moha for Ravana was his root cause of the problem, and that was egocentric driven. In the Mahabharata, Dhritarashtra's moha for his own Duryodhana, that moha, that was the root cause of the disaster or for the entire battle. So all the moha works in very, very subtle way. We can't even understand how it works, and it keeps us bonded, it keeps us attached to a lot of people, places, things, circumstances, and lot of things. So, and the mother or the ego, pride. Our ego, pride is the main cause of all the problems. Matsarya, jealousy. We can't see somebody else progressing better than us, and that's why we become jealous. We talk bad about them, ninda, and then we try to pull them down. This is all matsarya or jealousy. So these are the 6 shadharipus which we have to first take care. Unless these shadharipus, this vikara, are taken away, unless these shadharipus are taken away or they come out of us, we cannot get some daivi sampatti or good values inside us. And that's why we have to take these first out. These negative energies have to go out of our mind, our intellect, and our bodies. So essentially, this tells us about the sadhana on this path of spiritual practice. Initially, the first step is that we have to get from karma, from the action that we are doing. From karma, we have to go towards karma yoga. And for some people who are more inclined towards devotion, bhakti is also nice. It's a very devoted mark of cleansing of the inner self, bhakti. So in Bhagavata, if you see in Sri Bhagavat, bhakti is also considered a separate tradition. Like the karma yoga, bhakti is also bhakti yoga. And from this you can go to the Gnana yoga or the Gnana marga. People who are on the knowledge tradition, they can have dhyana yoga also to go to Gnana yoga. Dhyana means contemplation or meditation, and Gnana is knowledge. But in Gita Ji, bhakti is not separately expounded, because karma yoga itself means that karma plus bhakti becomes karma yoga. Because unless there is a surrender to the Lord, unless we are devoid of our ego, unless we do work with the nimitta matra bhava, that we are the instrument in the hands of the Lord, unless we have Ishvara Arpana Buddhi, surrender to the Lord, this cannot become karma yoga. So karma yoga itself means that there is bhakti inside, assimilated with the karma. And then on this path, raga, dvesha, mada, moha, matsarya, all this shadaripu we have to take away, and we have to use the shama adi shat sampatti. So vivek, vairagya, shama adi shat sampatti, mumukshu. So this is called the sadhana chatushtya sampatti. With this, the first step is the antakarana shuddhi, the cleansing of the mind, and which is the most important step. Unless this shuddhi happens, nothing works. One cannot get the gnana. So the most of the sadhana is here at this step. Once this is done, or this is also gradual process, it's not that one fine day it becomes clean. So it's also gradual process. And along with this process, then the Gnana Yoga Sadhana, the Shravana Manana Nididhyasana, where the Guru Pasadana, where you sit with the Guru, and then the Ajnana part, the ignorance has to go away. So that Ajnana goes away only with the Gnana. And with this Gnana can only come with the Shravana Manana Nididhyasana, and then finally it is called the Sakshatkara or the Atma Gnana, or the Antim Sadhana, which is there. So this is the entire process. This is the path which has been shown by the parampara or the tradition. We don't have to create a new path. This is the path on which we have to follow. Somebody is a seeker or an aspirant who is inspired to look for what is there inside, wants to explore the inner beings, what is that hidden potential that we have, and what is it that this consciousness is beyond what we can see, what is it that inner world, which is that mystic world. And then if somebody wants to explore this, then this is the path that has been expounded in our tradition. So that is something that we can, and this beautifully is explained in Bhagavad Gita, Karma Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, how the Shuddhi happens, and then what is the Asuri Sampatti, what is the Devi Sampatti, how we can take care and get onto this path and reach to the final destination. So now, after understanding this basic thing about Antakarana Shuddhi, understanding the path of the sadhana, how we can do it, let us start with the first shloka, or the first verse of Sri Hanuman Chalisa. Jaya Hanuman Gnana Guna Sagar, Jaya Kapisati Huloka Ujagar. So in this first verse, it says Jaya Hanuman. It says victory to Ho Hanuman, Lord Hanuman. Hanuman is the life force of the prana, also represented as a breath. He is the egoless. He represents the egolessness. So that is what Hanuman as he represents. Gnana Guna Sagar, he is the ocean of knowledge and beautiful good qualities. So we'll see Hanuman is very, very chatur, is very clever, he is also very guni, he has a lot of qualities. So we will see what all are his qualities. Jaya Kapisa. Kapisa, another name of Hanumana, but this name denotes the bliss because it drinks the nectar of bliss. And Tihu Loka Ujagar, he illuminates all the three lokas. Right now, which are these three lokas? On a worldly scale, you can see the Prithvi or this world. The upper loka is the heaven. The Patala is the under. The loka is the heaven. The Patala loka, which is underground. So on a samashti level, these are the three lokas. On a vyashti level, on an individual level, the three lokas are the stula sharira that we have, outer body, which is seen body, and then beyond this there is a very large sukshma sharira, the subtle body, because this is a huge one. It consists of the mind, the senses, the sense organs, all the panch gnanendriya, panch karmendriya, antakarana, which consists of mana, buddhi, ahankar, chitta. So all this consists of the sukshma sharira, which is part of the jiva, which is very important because which at the time of death, which just leaves this outer body which dies and it goes and takes another form or another body. So that is all death is all about. The jiva along with the sukshma sharira, it leaves this outer body or the stula sharira. It's a death is only of the outer body or the stula sharira. The sukshma sharira does not die. It goes from one body to the other. So that is what death is about. And then the third body is the karana sharira. Karana sharira is the causal body. It's avidya or ignorance that is there where we can perceive that in our deep sleep because all the senses are gone, outer body is not working, the inner body, the sukshma sharira is also not working, all the sense organs are not working. In deep sleep, in sushupta avastha, we can feel this connection with the bliss, and here we are the closest with our bliss. That is called the home of our life, our jiva. So that's only the ignorance part remains, because when we wake up, we say we don't remember, but we had a very nice sleep, and but we don't remember any other thing. So that is the karana sharira. So all this on individual level forms the three lokas, and all this is illuminated by the supreme being, the eternal consciousness. So that is the Hanuman. He represents this not just the life force, but the supreme or the eternal consciousness. So that is how we say Tihu Loka Ujagara. He illuminates all these three lokas. So Hanumanji is the divine monkey, half man, half animal, half Vanara. He is a constantly active monkey mind. It denotes the monkey mind. He is also considered to be the Kapisa or the king of the monkeys. And Hanu, it represents the upper chain, which represents the pride or the ego, which was shattered by Indra's thunderbolt, and which is also representative of the breath or the life force. Vajra smashed this, and that's how Hanuman became ego, devoid of ego. And that's a beautiful, for a devotee, there is nothing better than getting devoid of the ego. He's always surrendered to the Lord, and that's how he does not have his own ego. And this void, the ego void in his own self, is filled by Rama, the universal consciousness. Rama denotes the universal consciousness, and this is filled by Hanumana. So basically, if we can annihilate our ego, nothing like it. That will be the best thing. But most of us cannot do that. It's very difficult to annihilate our sense of our identification with our body, our mind. It's very difficult to completely destroy this. It's not just possible in a human life. And then the next step, if we can't do this, then we can expand this, to see this self form in many, many different self. Initially in our loved and dear ones, initially to our form of God that we pray every day, we can see that, and then we can see that in our near and dear ones, and then we can see that in other life forms, and then in all the other beings also. So that is how we can expand our ego. So thinking of all others from the self to the universal consciousness, starting from me, we have to go to the we consciousness. That is what a spiritual journey is all about. So in the Sankhya philosophy, which started by Kapila Muni, it says that this how the world was created, the creation of this universe from Nirguna. Nirguna is formless, Brahma. that is it is the supreme or the divine consciousness, how this earth or this universe, which is Saguna, it is having a form, how this was created. And then it says that it was created by the amalgamation of Purusha and Prakriti. Purusha is a consciousness, and Prakriti is the nature. And this Mother Nature is made up of 24 elements plus Purusha, so there are total 25 elements. And from this, the first what was developed was the Mahat Tattva. Mahat Tattva is also partly Avyakta, unseen, and this represents a universal ego. And from there on, the universe, the Sukshma universe, the subtle universe was developed, and then from the 5 elements, there was a mixture of the 5 elements, and from there, the Stula or the form universe, was created. So this is how the entire process of creation of the universe has been explained. And so these 24 elements of the Prakriti, of the Mother Nature, the 5 great elements, the Panch Mahabhuta, the Akasha, Vayu, Teja or the fire, wind, the Vayu, and the Prithvi or the earth. 10 senses, the 5 Jnanendriyas, there's the Shrotra Indriya, the Tvaka Indriya. Tvacha is the touch sense, the Shrotra, Tvacha, Chakshu Indriya is the vision that we see, Grahana Indriya, and the Rasa Indriya, that is the sense of smell and the sense of taste. So all these 5 Jnanendriya, the 5 Karmendriyas, which we use for doing our action. The 5 Karmendriyas are Vak, Pani. Vak is the speech, Pani is it's the hand, the Pada is the feet, Payu, Upastha. So all these 5 Karmendriyas, the 5 Tanamatra, the Shabda, Sparsha, Rupa, Rasa, Gandha, also called the 5 Vishayas. So all these together form the 20 elements, plus the 4 Antakarana, Mana, Buddhi, Chitta, Ahankar, so 24 elements, and the Purusha, the 25 elements. So this is how the universe has been created. But the important thing is that the universal ego, the Mahat Tattva, was created much before the universe was created. And that's how, in our path of ascent also, if we want to, go up and surrender to the Almighty and reach to our roots, then we have to, annihilate our ego or expand our ego and merge this individual, our identification with the universal identification. So Hanuman is the embodiment of this ego surrender. He has surrendered his ego, and that's how he has become one with the universal consciousness. So what is this Gnana, knowledge, and what are the qualities? Gnana, Guna, Sagara. So Gnana is the ultimate knowledge. There are 2 types of knowledge in the Indian tradition. One is Aparavidya. Aparavidya is something that is in this world. All these laws of physics, chemistry, mathematics, biology, medicine, all these laws, the theory of relativity, the laws of Newton, and everything. All this is part of the Aparavidya. This is part of the Veda Gnana also. Even Veda Gnana falls under the Aparavidya. So all this is Aparavidya, which we can know, for which we always aspire to understand, to know information, knowledge, whatever we want to understand. But there is another knowledge which is called Paravidya. Paravidya is outside this world, something which we can't see, which we can't sometimes fathom, we can't understand, also difficult to understand. And this knowledge of the self, knowledge of the Atma, or knowledge of this Tattva, Tattva Gnan, Atma Gnan, or it is also called Brahma Gnan, the Gnan of the universal consciousness. This is the Paravidya, which is described and which can be understood through the Upanishads. So Upanishads is the part of the Vedanta. Vedanta is the knowledge part of the Veda. So this understanding is given in the Upanishad, and Bhagavad Gita is also the summary of the Upanishad Gnana. So through Bhagavad Gita, through Upanishad, through Vedanta, we can understand this Paravidya, and only through a knowledgeable Guru who has understood this through a Parampara, we can understand this knowledge. So this is the Paravidya. So once we know this, it is said that once you know Paravidya, Aparavidya becomes immaterial. Because with understanding of the Paravidya in Bhagavad Gita only, Lord Krishna says that if you know Paravidya, Aparavidya, you transcend this Aparavidya. So finally, the world is made up of the three gunas. It's called the Trigunatmika Jagata. Jagata is made up of these ecology of the mind, Sattva, Rajas, and the Tamas gun, through which we work or through which we function. So all these three gunas are present in us in different proportions, through which develops our own individual personality and our character. So in Gita Ji, these very beautiful 20 human or moral values have been espoused. Abhayam, Sattva, Shuddhi. So that all these 20 values have been said, which are good values. In the 16th Adhyaya of the Gita Ji, Bhagavad Gita, 26 Daivi Sampatti and 6 Asuri Sampatti. 16th Adhyaya is the Daivi Asuri Sampatti Yoga Adhyaya, in which 26 Daivi Sampatti are explained in the first 4 verses. So this forms the basis of what are the good values that we need to understand. So Gita Ji is a complete book which can tell us what all values we need to, and through a guru we can transcend this 3 gunas, and we can go to the Paravidya. So mind cleansing, mind awareness is all about getting all this Daivi Sampatti, removing our Asuri Sampatti. It's not just physical awareness, but it is essential for our spiritual path of ascent. So finally, on this spiritual journey, you can think that you are going up in the journey, and when we go up as a journey on an airplane, we need 2 wings. Similarly, if you think in an Indian tradition, we feel that Lord is the one who gets us across this ocean of this world. It's called Bhavasagara. Bhavasagara par karana karaveche, meaning the Lord takes us through this Bhavasagara par. He gets us through this ocean of this world. And for that you need the twin oars, because that's only you can go through the ocean in a boat, and a boat has to be by twin oars. So what are these twin oars or twin wings for our journey? So in this shloka it says the first is Jai Hanumana. As a Hanumana represents the egolessness or the surrender to the God, and this is the first and the fundamentally most important. And in outward world, when we deal with people around us, our surrender to the God, and only by surrender to the God we can get egoless. And if only we can get egoless, we can surrender to God. So it's both the things are tuned to each other. And that is what Jai Hanumana represents. In the second line, it says Jai Kapisa. So Jai Kapisa is our inner self, our bliss self, which we have to connect to this bliss self. And through this bliss self, if we connect to this, we can only then shower love and compassion outside. So this is our inner self. So these are the twin oars or the twin wings of our spiritual journey. And we can also say that Jai Hanumana Gnana Guna Sagar is kind of a Saguna Swarup of Shri Hanumana, because it represents our egolessness. Gnana Guna only in a Saguna, in a form, and Hanuman as a form. We can exhale our ego, because the first line Hanumana is the egoless. So and Hanuman is the breath awareness. So whenever we exhale, we always feel that we are exhaling the ego. And as a Jai Kapisa, Tihu Loka Uchagar, as illuminating the 3 loka, Kapisa or the bliss form, the inner self, our understanding of our Atma as a Nirguna Swarupa, because that is a Nirguna Nirakara. That is something that is a Paravidya, we cannot see it. It's Nirguna, it cannot be seen. And we inhale the bliss. So with the inhalation, we inhale this bliss form, and when we exhale, when we are aware about our mind, we exhale the ego form. So with this is kind of the understanding that we can develop from this first shloka of Shri Hanuman Chalisa. So let's come to the second shloka. Ramadut atulit baladhama Anjani putra pavana sutanama. So Ramaduta means Hanumanji is the messenger of Lord Rama. And as the messenger of the Lord Rama, what are the qualities that he is having? He has Atulita Bala Dhama. He is the abode of infinite strength. Atulita means infinite. Bala is strength. And Dhama means he is the abode. So, and where does this energy and this strength come from? In Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna says that for the people who have a lot of strength, I am your strength. I am his strength. So that energy, that strength comes from the Lord, because he is one with this infinite energy of Sri Rama. So this energy, this infinite strength of Hanumana, how he could take the mountain, he could go to Lanka, he could burn the Lanka with his burning his tail was burned, and he went around the entire Lanka and burnt Lanka. So how he could get this infinite strength, and that comes only from this infinite energy of the Lord. It says Anjani Putra, that's his name. Of course, Anjani also means Kajala. Kajala is the one black that the women in India use for the Shringara. So that also signifies the Kajala of knowledge that the Lord or the Guruji gives us, or the Shiva gives us. And Putra, Pu stands for purification. And Putra is a son. So the children are our purifiers for the parents, because they teach us a lot of things. They show us the love, compassion, they teach us tolerance, they teach us a lot of things. So children are our purifiers. And Pavanasuta Nama. Pavanasuta is the son of the wind god, the life force and the breath awareness. And Nama itself means that, okay, we'll come to that. So as a Ramaduta, Hanuman is in a true sense, is a karma yogi actually. Because as a messenger of the god, many of our Rishi Munis have also been messengers of the god, because they have been able to see all these mantras or the sacred hymns in their own inner self, and that's how they could write it. And these are called Spruti Shastra. So there are different types of Shastra. One is the Shruti Shastra. Veda is a Shruti Shastra because it is spoken, and that's how it has been passed on into generation. But there's another kind of Shastra which are called Spruti Shastra, where the Rishi Munis could actually visualize all the shlokas and they could write. And then there is epic Shastra. Ramayana and Mahabharata are the epics. So these are the epic Shastras. So there are different types of Shastras. Coming to the Karma Yoga, how Hanuman is the Karma Yogi. So Hanumana has all these qualities of Ishwararpana Bhava. He is surrendered to the Lord Rama, and that's how he is egoless. That is a quality that Lord Krishna in the 3rd Adhyaya Karma Yoga says Ishwararpana Bhava is very important. Nishkam Karma, selfless action. So that attitudes of selfless action that is propounded in the 3rd Adhyaya of the Karma Yoga. How it is possible? One is a sense of duty. Niyatam Kuru Karmatvam. In the 8th shloka of the 3rd Adhyaya, Lord Krishna says, Niyatam Kuru Karmatvam. So you do your duty in the best possible way. And you can see that Hanuman is doing his duty. His mission is only to be a messenger of the God. His only mission is to fulfill the mission of Lord Rama. That is his only duty, and that's how he's working. The second is a Yagna Buddhi. There is a Yagna going on in the entire universe. There's a harmony through which and you better. So Lord says that Yagna Buddhi say you do your action like you are doing a karma, giving some ahuti, giving your contribution into the sacrificial fire. And the third type of attitude that Lord Krishna says is a Dharma Buddhi. Just like there is a Srushti Chakra, a balance of the universe is going on between all the living beings who live here. So why don't you contribute to this? Even if you don't believe in duty or in God, but at least as part of your duty towards this universe, you better contribute to this and do your attitude with the selfless action. And then finally, Prasada Buddhi. So these first three are for the karma. The final one is the karma phala. So whenever you get the fruits or the karma phala, then you have this Prasada Buddhi as if it's the offering of the Lord that you have got. So you accept it unconditionally, share it with everyone, don't complain about it. So this is what Hanuman expounds, or he actually depicts everything. All this, he can depict all these qualities. So he's a true karma yogi in a true sense, what is depicted by Lord Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita. So all these qualities are there with Hanumana. He is complete surrender, Ishwararpana Bhavana. He always believes himself that everything belongs to Rama, even the entire world, not only the entire world, even himself, his body, everything, nothing belongs to him. His entire body, his intellect, his mind, his energy, his all his strength, everything belongs to the Lord. He's a silent giver. He doesn't complain, he just gives whatever best is in the service of the Lord, and his message for living is to giving. So to live is to give. And if we keep giving, then we can get more and more from the Lord. So this kind of understanding only comes through understanding Hanuman. and he is giving all of himself. We want to live like a Hanuman. We have to give as much as we can. Whatever God has given us, we should try and give as much as we can. Hanumana also is very eager to serve Sri Rama. He sits in a virasana. His posture is also such that he is always ever ready to help or to work or to do anything for Lord Rama and Sita. So, Pavanasuta Nama. Nama means Nama Smarana. So, one are the Nama or of Hanumana, but Nama itself, Hanuman himself is the name form of Sri Rama. So, Nama Smarana in the Indian tradition, Japa, it's also called Japa or Nama, has a great importance. And it is said that in Kali Yuga, what is going on today, Kali Yuga, Nama Smaran itself can lead us to the divine. So it is so powerful. Nama Smaran ka mahima is so huge that it can actually access us to the Lord. It can actually make the presence of the Lord felt inside us. So Nama se bhi nami bada hai. It is said that Nama Smarana, it's even bigger than the Nami or the person whose name we are chanting himself. And that is the importance of Nama Smarana. So Rama Nama is very, very important, Nama Smarana. And there is this beautiful story that there was a big problem how the Vanar Sena could cross over to Lanka and how they could build a bridge over the ocean or how they could actually cross to Lanka. There was a big problem. Nobody knew what to do. And Sri Rama, then he finances for Sagar Devta. And Sagar Devta, he doesn't get, he doesn't come. So Rama uses his Brahmastra and Sagara is invoked. And he says that Nala and Nila, these are the two Vanara princes in the Sena who have this kind of a boon that whatever stones or whatever they will throw, it will float in the water. So that is what Sagar Devta tells them. And then Hanuman, what he does is, he writes Sri Rama Nama on each of the stones and gives them to Nala Nila. So they will go and throw it into the ocean and it will stay there. So Hanumana, by this, he is such a devotee, he just writes because he didn't have to throw the stones. So he just sat down and was, writing Sri Rama. And then Rama, he asks Hanumana, why is it that whatever stones you are throwing are floating on this and whatever stones I am throwing are sinking into the ocean? They are not staying there. This was a question. My stones don't float, they stink. Why is it that? And Hanumana answers, if someone or something falls from your hand, definitely will sink. It will not float. It shows what kind of understanding Hanuman has, what kind of devotee he is, and he is always in the service of the Lord, always surrendered to the Lord. Coming to the third verse, the third chopai, Mahabir Bikram Bajrangi Kumati Nivar Sumati Ke Sangi. It says Mahabir, his great strength. These are all the qualities of Sri Hanumana. He has great strength, physical as well as mental. Bikrama. Bikrama means, Krama means an order. And somebody who does not follow or does not need to follow an order or a sequence or rules is called Bikrama. So that's how this word comes. Bajrangi. Bajra Anga. Bajra Anga. Bajra means very hard. Something like Vajra. Vajra is a thunderbolt. So it is very hard. And Vajra also means a speed. And Anga means organs. So that is how Hanuman's body is like, very hard. Kumati Nivara. So Kumati is a chaotic or a confused mind, completely chattering mind, constantly filled with disturbances, anxieties, worries of the past, of the future, fears. All this is a Kumati, Nivara. So remove this kind of Kumati from my mind and Sumati ke Sangi, befriend a harmonious, a pleasant, a clear, a calm, a composed mind. So this is Sumati. So how can we go from Kumati to Sumati? So that is what Lord Hanuman is all about. So let's come to Mahavira. Mahavira is, can be 5 types of Veer. Somebody can become a Veer or greatness by Tyaga. So he controls greed, gives away as much as he can. By Tyag se they can become Veer. Somebody can become Veer. Veer means very great. Greatness can be achieved by Daya, forgiveness. Even to enemies, they can forgive their enemies also. Some people can achieve greatness by Vidya or knowledge. They can become great by imbibing knowledge. Some people can become great by giving. They can become a giver for the benefit of others, dana, donations, philanthropy. They can become great by giving away. And some people can become great by conquering their enemies. So they can, destroy the enemies and conquer their enemies, and Ranaveer, isko kehte hain. So these are the 5 viras. But the mind transformation is the key thing. How from Kumati to Sumati. So our mind normally works like a judgmental mind. It's an opinionated mind. And this is based on our ego and our identification. And this we need to convert to an open mind, which is more, acceptable, more, it is non-judgmental. It does not, it can accept a lot of different ideas. It is not fixed to a particular solution. It can explore different opportunities, options, and then come to a decision. So and the other mind which is we need to convert is the gratitude mind, where we have a lot of gratitude towards the Lord who has given us so much for our life to live, at every point of time, to our other colleagues who have already helped us, our team members, our family, our spouse, our children who helped us. So that kind of gratitude to our parents. For this, we need to create a healthy routine lifestyle, and that kind of regularity, discipline, and balance is very important for our mind transformation. Mindfulness in all our actions. It is very, very important if we want to go from Kumati to Sumati. A moment a bad thought comes in our mind, we should be aware that this thought has come. A moment an attachment, a moment obsession comes up, a moment a greed comes up, a moment all this comes up in our mind, anger comes up in our mind. We should become alert, aware. That kind of mindfulness in all our thoughts, only then we can have mindfulness in our actions. And this can come with meditation. Meditation is extremely vital. Just sitting in silence, contemplating on the breath, being aware of our own self, our consciousness, from our false identification of our body, our mind, our intellect, our breath. We have to go towards experiencing our consciousness, initially our own self, and then expanding our consciousness to the universal consciousness. So this is the kind of meditation that we need to do. So Hanuman is a representation of a friend, a philosopher, and a guide who is there for us all the time, guides us to develop better and better qualities. The 4th doha or the verse, it's not a doha, sorry, it's a chaupai. It's a Kanchan Barana Biraj Subesa Kanan Kundal Kunchit Kesa. So Kanchana Barana means a golden glow which Hanuman has in his being. Biraja Subesa is being well groomed. Kanana Kundal means ear and earrings. Kunchita Kesa means curly hair. So all these are qualities of Sri Hanumana, and what does it represent, and how we can imbibe or we can learn from this. So curly hair basically represents inner beauty and softness of the heart of Sri Hanumana. Keshava. Krishna is also called Keshava because he also has curly hair, and he also has a very soft heart and a compassion towards all the beings. Kanchana Barana means a golden glow, and Hanuman has this golden glow in him, around him. Any person who is very knowledgeable, has divine qualities, a great devotee, a bhakta, a great human being will have a kind of a glow. Even our Guruji would have that glow. We can see, we can feel that glow when we come close to them. There is some kind of a calmness in them which gives them this glow. So any person or a white Guru also can have this glow because of the great character, the divine energy that they have, a very balanced personality that they have. In Ishavasya Upanishad, there is a shloka at the end as a prayer. It says, Hiranyamayena patrena satyasya pihitam mukham tatvam pushana pavrunu satya dharmaya drashtaya. Means knowledge is hidden with the ignorance. So if I take this golden globe, that something that is very sparkling, so if I take this away, the sparkling thing, then the knowledge, the truth is hidden there. And it is hidden with this ignorance, the shield of ignorance. So when we pray that this ignorance is taken away and this truth or the knowledge is exposed to us. So for the seeker, we must aspire for this inner glow of knowledge, because it's only the knowledge can give this glow. This glow cannot come with any of the physical strength. We go to the gym, do a lot of exercise, we can't have a glow. Only if I have this understanding, this true knowledge, this truth, awareness about this truth, about the divinity, then only we can have this glow. So that is the aspiration, or that is a purpose of this Kanchana Bharana. So that is how we can merge from our universal consciousness, from me to we consciousness. Viraja Subesa means being well groomed, and Hanuman is always well groomed. He wears beautiful Shringara. Is very, not very well dressed, very scantily dressed, but always very cleanly dressed, very well groomed. And so for all of us who are in a worldly or in a spiritual journey, it is important to be, have a good appearance, good behavior and competence. This is the ABC. And this rule shows that whatever we speak is only 7%. How we speak that is more important. And our body language, our posture, our dressing, our body language, all these accounts for majority, almost 55% of whatever we speak. And my grandfather used to tell me always that it is your duty to look your best whenever I was a child. And that is something that has come into me. Then it's very important that we should look our best. That is our responsibility. But going beyond that, we should also understand that awareness of the person who is dressed is more important than being aware of the person what he is wearing. So the dress itself is not that important, but the person who is wearing the dress is more important. And that's why our awareness should be towards that person who is wearing the dress. And in Vedanta, even in Bhagavad Gita, it is said that body is like a dress for the soul. And in this shloka, Vasanti Chiranani Yatha Vihaya, it is very simply explained, the process of death is very simply, clearly explained by Lord Krishna. Says that, just like you take out your old clothes and wear new clothes, similarly, when the body becomes old, this Jiva or the Jivatma sheds off this body and goes to a new body and wears this new cloth and gets a new cover. So body is also like a dress. So we need to be well dressed, means that we we'll take care of our body also, we take care of our physical being with discipline, and physical fitness is also important. Kanana Kundala, ear and the earrings. Ear piercing is part of the Indian tradition called Upanayana Sanskara. God has given us 2 ears. That also shows that there are 2 paths, the path of Sankhya, the intelligence, and the path of Yoga, the intuitive, or the Kundalini Shakti. The ear is the gross ear, but beyond this gross ear there is an energy which is called the Shrotrendriya. It's part of the Gnana Indriya. So this energy takes the message of the words to the mind and to the brain. So the ears or the Shrotrendriya it's a seat for the listening skill, and the second, the ear is also a seat of the organ of balance, because there is a eustachian canal, eustachian tube, and entire apparatus which gives us the balance of life, which is also very important. So both these are very important functions of the ear. First, let us talk about the listening skill. There is something called active listening. We listening with our attention focused on the speaker, right? But the second part is called the passive listening, or just the hearing. We are not, we are thinking something else and we are just listening. And very commonly we do this. We are not completely into listening. So we try to go from passive listening to more active listening. And there is something called restrained listening, to filter our ego, our press, and to become a more empathic listener, where we are aware to the other person, what the other person is talking, not just the words, but even the emotions, even the body language, even the the intent, what that person is trying to tell us, what is the purpose. Sometimes we have to superimpose the emotions and filter the emotions rather, and to see the content or the purpose of what the person is talking. So it is said that our mind has a capacity to process some 500 words a minute. And normally, during a normal listening, we only, somebody speaks only at a speed of 150 words per minute. So we have a spare idle capacity of almost 350 words per minute, which can be processed. And this is called Route 350 in psychology. And in this time, what we do is there are people who try to just, they have their own thoughts, judgment, and their mind works. Wherever somebody is talking or we are listening, We have our own thoughts, we have our own judgment, we are thinking what we will speak, we want to speak something, we are already made up of our mind that this is how I will respond or I'll react. So that is one way to react. The second way is to connect to that being. With this 350 route, we can connect to their being, their emotions, their intent. And the third is the wise people or people who have wisdom. They would probably, by intently listening, they would be doing the Nam Smarana inside. They'll be connected to the divine consciousness by doing the Nam Smaran while they are listening intently. So they have developed this ability. So this is how we can improve our human potential of the listening skill. The second is the organ of balance, and the organ of balance we can activate by activating our Kundalini Shakti, our dormant energies that we have, and this is a yogic life where the divine qualities that are hidden in ourselves, right from the Mooladhara Chakra to the Sahasra Chakra. There are different levels of activation of the Shakti. This is the yogic life, the yogic tradition, and this is how we can improve our divine qualities. Learning how to acquire that golden glow. We said that the golden glow only comes with the knowledge. So in my life, what is the learning from this shloka? How can I attain that golden glow? So the first thing is you have to get discipline, and this discipline, the first thing is in the lifestyle. We have to have a balanced lifestyle, diet, exercise, sleep, food, how we balance our spiritual work time to the worldly time, how we balance our family life to the social life. All this balancing is the most important, how we balance our work and the life. So this is very, very important. And then of course the meditation is the other part, how we can achieve this knowledge in our life. Of course the presence of Guru is most important. Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasan, contemplation, Atma Nirikshana, self-introspection, all these are very, very important. Grooming, dignified clothing, body language, empathic listening, connecting to the being of the other person, listener, and balance in the work-life balance. Forgiveness, yes, listening. Ears are also, kisi ka maafi magna hai, suppose we want to forgive, ask for forgiveness, we say we hold our ears. And as a child also, the school teacher used to ask us to, to touch our ears, to ask for forgiveness. So we should also forgive people and understand that to err is human. Just like we are human, we are also making our own mistakes. Other person is also making mistakes, so we should try and forgive them. So this is a learning from this shloka. So with this, we come to the end of the second session. We have already seen the first two dohas and learned the qualities of Hanumanji from the first four shlokas or the first four verses. Thank you very much.